Hello and welcome, everyone. We're going to get the webinar started in just a bit. This is one of the Sustainable Fleet webinar series. This is on propane autogas for school fleets. We have a great agenda of speakers lined up for today. Next slide, please. Before we get started, I want to say this is the last of about 6 webinars for the year, ending with school fleets. We're getting ready to announce a list of both in-person workshops and webinars for 2018 with in-person events in San Diego, Raleigh, and tentatively we're looking at Fresno as well. The Sustainable Fleet webinar series is organized in partnership between the Center for Sustainable Energy, where we're calling from today, with our partners North Carolina Clean Energy Technology Center based out of NC State, and San Diego Regional Clean Cities Coalition, which is also works very closely with Center for Sustainable Energy as well. A special thank you today for Kansas City Regional Clean Cities Coalition and Greater Lansing Area Clean Cities Coalition for helping to promote today's event. Many folks on the call have probably already worked with the Clean Cities Coalition, and it means a lot to have the support of other coalitions across the country that are working actively with fleets to help reduce petroleum and tailpipe emissions. The agenda for today, we're actually changing up a little bit. Our first speaker will be Mike Taylor from PERC, followed by John Benish from Cook Illinois Corporation, speaking about their propane fleet. David Griffin from ICOM North America, speaking about propane autogas applications for the white fleet, and David Musin from Zeeland Public Schools to talk about the implementation of propane autogas in that organization's operations. After all of the speakers have presented, we'll move into Q&A. So our first speaker up will be Mike Taylor from PERC. Mike and PERC really don't need an introduction for how visible and for all the work that that organization does to educate industry and stakeholders about the benefits of propane autogas, its use across many different applications, both on-road and off-road. We're lucky to have Mike on this webinar today, lending a national voice and his expertise to the subject. Mike, we're going to hand it over to you in just a minute. Let us know when you want us to advance the slides by just saying next slide, please.
Will do.
Thank you. There you go. It's all yours, Mike.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thank you, Michael, for that nice introduction. The title today is Propane Can Do That, not only in school transportation, but we can be a one-fuel source for on-road, off-road, residential, commercial. We can even cut your grass, and we can make it clean. Today, I'd like to give you a high-level overview, talk a little bit about the history of propane, what's driving adoption, the actual sales numbers that we have, the reasons that people are switching to propane as their fuel of choice, and then close out with some resources that PERC has available to everyone listening today. Next slide, please. Propane is not a new fuel to school transportation or transportation for that matter. Going back to 1975, Northside ISD in San Antonio, Texas, has been operating on propane as their primary fuel of choice for over 4 decades now. And if you remember back in the 1970s, either through personal experience or history, we were concerned about zero oil. Now, wow, how things have changed through the years. We were looking at 55 miles per hour daylight savings time, and there wasn't going to be enough oil to go around. So people were looking for alternatives, choices that they could switch to. And Northside ISD was one of the originals, and I'm sure there's a number of others in Texas. Another long-term user is Portland Public Schools in Oregon. From there, we transitioned. To show the sustainability of our technology, I wanted to walk you back through the history of it. So from there, we went to basically converted gasoline engines to operate on propane. And probably our biggest success to that point being the late 90s into the early 2000s with the GM 8.1 liter. And a number of those are still in operation today. But the technology for us really made a change and became more sustainable. And when Roush Clean Tech partnered with Bluebird, with the Ford 6.8 liter 3-valve and 2-valve engines around 2010. That was followed by the Freightliner custom chassis Thomas built powertrain integration 8 liter on the GM block. And then PSI IC bus relationship was established, utilizing the PSI 8.8 liter engine just 2 years ago. In July of this year, Blue Bird celebrated a milestone achievement for us, for the propane industry, by delivering their 10,000th propane bus to Fulton County schools in Atlanta. So as you can see, throughout the years, throughout the decades, propane has been a proven fuel of choice, motor fuel of choice for a number of types of fleets, including school buses. Next slide, please. Just taking a look at where we're at today in school transportation, knowing how traditional this market is and how resistant it is to change, this is a huge landmark, I believe, for our fuel. Today we have over 13,500 propane school buses operating in 47 states, that may have changed to 48, in over 750 school districts, and we're transporting about 800,000 students daily. And just 7 years ago, this number, to show you the dramatic increase, about 7 years ago we had almost 1,800 on the road. So schools are adopting, private contractors are adopting. You're going to hear stories today from my fellow panelists about their experiences, and I look forward to hearing from both Dave and John. Next slide, please. So what's driving the adoption? As I pointed out earlier, it's a proven sustainable technology, and we're only getting better. Today we're utilizing electronic fuel injection, and we are moving toward direct injection, which makes us even more viable. We have the lowest total cost of operation and ownership for any fuel, that's including conventional and alternative fuels. Reliable operation in all climates, I'll show you a couple of slides, and the environmental benefits of propane. So the benefits of our fuel are broad, and I like to say we're a green fuel. We're green and clean, and we're green and we can save you money. Next slide, please. The school bus options actually began, our flagship, as I like to say, and our longest term partner has been Blue Bird Corporation out of Fort Valley, Georgia. Their initial introduction was the Blue Bird Vision. Today it operates a Ford 6.8 liter 3-valve engine, and by far the leading sales vehicle in school transportation. Next slide, please. Joining the Bluebird lineup on the Ford E450 chassis is the Bluebird Microbird. It is equipped with the 6.8 liter 2-valve engine, Roush CleanTech. Next. Shortly after Bluebird, Collins' next bus was added to our lineup. This is on the GM 4500 cutaway chassis with the GM 6-liter Clean Fuels USA. Today it would be known as Agility Fuel Solutions. That was added to our lineup in class Type A, And next was the added to our lineup was the Thomas Minotaur Class A, or excuse me, Type A. I keep saying class. Type A. And this too is also on the GM 4500 cutaway with the GM 6-liter. Next. Shortly after that, we added what is proven to be a very good bus for us is the Thomas Safety Liner Type C on the Freightliner custom chassis S2 chassis with the powertrain integration 8-liter engine. Powertrain integration was purchased by, the assets of powertrain integration were purchased by Power Solutions Incorporated out of Illinois last year, and they are now the owner of that engine. And then the lineup next was completed when we added the IC, one more click please. We added the ICCE, which has been a very good vehicle for us as well, a good seller. This is equipped with the Power Solutions PSI 8.8 liter. Next slide. Lowest total cost of ownership. Today more than ever, fleet managers, fleet directors, private contractors, owners are challenged with not only knowing the cost up front, but what it's going to cost me to own and operate this vehicle over its lifetime. I learned this lesson on the battlefield, if you will. Prior to joining PERC, I was fleet director of the third largest propane supplier in the country, and we had over 5,000 vehicles on the road. And when the diesel technology started to change in 2007, I learned real fast that I could go for a low bid up front, but it would cost me on the backside. So I had to look at exactly what I was purchasing, and then what it would cost me annually as the vehicle aged, and uptime, hours of service versus downtime, maintenance cost, and I began to look at 3 F's. Any fuel, if you'll compare the 3 F's, you'll get your baseline cost over the life of the vehicle for that fuel. And the 3 F's are the cost of fuel, the cost of the fluids thrown on these vehicles, as well as the cost of the filters. So please make sure as you're looking at the vehicle, the technology that you're considering purchasing, look at all of the costs that are associated with that, so you're not surprised 3, 4, 5 years down the road by non-warrantable repairs that you did not expect, by the additional fluids that are added, by modifications that you're required to make in your garage or your repair and maintenance facilities, and the list goes on and on. Infrastructure is a big cost that you need to review as well. Next. Reliable operation. One thing that we hear repeatedly time after time is diesels do not like to crank in winter. And I know that from being a former fleet director. There are additional emissions equipment on these vehicles, which it requires additional fluids, has additional filters, the largest one being your diesel particulate filter. And in the cold climates like we see here at Warren Township in Indianapolis, Indiana, you have to plug those buses in. And with propane, you don't have to worry about that. Our boiling point is minus 44 degrees Fahrenheit. We love cold weather. We don't require block heaters. We crank reliably in the winter, and we warm up quickly, providing consistent heat throughout that passenger compartment. So you can rely on propane to reduce your costs, operating costs during the winter. No early startup crews. Next slide. Environmentally, this is huge to me from an EPA point of view. Propane is non-toxic and non-contaminant of air, soil, and water resources. And so leaks are unlikely with our closed-loop pressurized fuel system, but in the event that there is a leak, you don't have to worry about the cleanup, the hazmat cleanup afterwards like you do with gasoline and diesel. So this is, from just the clean standpoint, the environmental benefits, this is one of the top for me. Next. And our customers as well. Here in comparison, if you look at light and medium duty vehicles, greenhouse gas emissions and the NOx emissions, air pollution, as well as acid rain and smog. How does propane compare to diesel and gasoline? And if you'll take a look on the left at light duty vehicles, we're similar to diesel and 14% better than gasoline. On NOx emissions, 57% better than diesel, 6% better on gasoline. And if you look at medium duty, we're even better. And these are the 0.2 grams per brake horsepower NOx engines. Today we do have ultra low NOx that are certified at 0.5 and below grams per brake horsepower. And with those vehicles, compared to the 0.2 standard that is required today, propane is 75% cleaner. And if you use the ultra low NOx engines, we're up to 90% cleaner than diesel. Next. Refueling, one of the big costs when you're making a transition to an alternative fuel, or any type of fuel for that matter, is your refueling infrastructure. And there are concerns, rightfully so, in that you should know where you're going to be able to get your fuel. 3 things I want to point out. Propane is a very portable fuel. We can be delivered through via truck, via pipeline, or via rail. And there's no part of the country we can't reach. Dispensers today, if you look at the left, they mirror the automotive, diesel and gasoline refueling dispensers that you have in all of the refueling stations today. And if you take a look at the right, the nozzle that we have, the K15 nozzle Euro that was introduced last year, as well as the Acme, are very secure connections, easy to operate. Next, please, click. Compared to diesel and gasoline, you can actually spill diesel and gasoline when you're refueling. In interviewing drivers, they like the propane. If you'll click, please. They like the propane because of the secure lock nozzle. There's no way that the fuel gets out. Evaporative emissions when you disconnect is 0.42 cc's. Compared to gasoline and diesel, there's no chance of leaking there. And the drivers love it because they don't wear the smell on the route or at home after the route is ended. So no concerns about refueling. As far as refueling infrastructure, we can get the fuel to you. We can put you in contact with infrastructure suppliers as well as propane marketers. We have over 3,000 propane marketers nationwide. So don't be concerned about getting your fuel, who's going to get it to you, and how we're going to get it there. Next. PERC resources, I just want to show you 3 today. Repair and maintenance facility requirements, dispensing propane autogas, and then third is our dispenser specifications. But if you go online, and I will have the links at the end of the presentation, we have untold amounts of resources that are out there in terms of collateral, straight talk videos, which I think are just outstanding. And we can help you. We can educate you, train you, assist you, facilitate those introductions to make sure that you know who to work with and what to expect. And we're here to help you. As far as personal resources, if you'd like for us to come and visit to give that unbiased opinion of propane, we're happy to do that. But PERC is here to help you. We want to see you succeed because when your fleet succeeds, our fuel grows. Thank you. Next. And another question that we hear frequently is, where are we going to find the technicians? And in one effort to resolve some of that challenge, we partnered with the National Alternative Fuels Training Consortium. If you're not familiar with this group, they are viewed as the leading alternative fuels specialist regarding training in the U.S. So we're proud of our partnership. PERC is invested with NAFTC, and we have hosted trainings at PERC expense throughout the country. If you look down at the lower right-hand side of the photo on the left, you can see the training schedule. At this gateway, you can actually sign up, find out where the training classes are scheduled and what is required to get you in that class. The photo on the top right-hand side is actually technicians inside the Bluebird factory of training that we held there. And also, too, I think it's important to point out that unlike diesel, mechanics, technicians love the propane engines because they can actually get inside the wheels to work on that engine when needed. So training, where are you going to get your technicians, how are you going to get your technicians up to speed? We can assist you with that. And each of our OEM partners has outstanding training available. As they introduce you to the fuel, they will have subject matter experts on hand that can come to you. There's actual resources online, Roush Clean Tech, PSI, Agility Fuel Solutions, Clean Fuel USA, as well as Bluebird Thomas and IC in Collins. So don't worry about your technicians, we got you covered. Next slide. So in summary, I know I've given you a very quick, very rapid, if you will, overview, high-level overview of propane. But we are the Propane Education Research Council, not a government agency. We're actually a checkoff program that was authorized by the PEER Act in the late 1990s. And our goal in life is to create sustainable technologies that consume propane. So if you want to know more about us, the 2 links are propane.com and propanecouncil.org. If you don't find what you're looking for there, please email me at michael.taylor@propane.com, or feel free to give me a call on my cell phone, 859-409-1439. And Michael, I do appreciate this opportunity today, and I'll be available for questions later. Thank you.
Outstanding. Thank you so much, Mike, for making the time to share your expertise today. Our next speaker is John Benish from Cook, Illinois Corporation. Cook, Illinois has been using propane autogas in its fleet since, or first used it in the 1980s, and is the nation's largest family-owned operator. John, I'd like to hand it over to you.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, depending where you're at. So thank you for the introduction. You could go to the first slide. So as mentioned, we're a family-owned and operated school bus contractor based primarily in the Chicago and Chicago suburbs. Been around since the late 50s. As mentioned, we are one of the largest, if not the largest, family-owned and operated school bus company in the country. Right now, we operate a little bit over 2,200 vehicles on a day-to-day basis. In the past, you can tell we have run, like everybody else has in the larger vehicle market, primarily just diesel engines. Not only because that was the only thing out there, but it was a nice application at the time for school bus transportation. We did use some propane buses in the mid-late 80s. In fact, one of my jobs as a child in high school was converting gasoline school buses over to propane. And as time went by and the diesel engines became more prevalent in that market, we would started to get back into diesels in the late 80s and the last 25 years. In the last 10 years, as I've seen on the slide, you can see we try to green that system up, to green out the diesels using some biodiesel, which is a great product, a nice alternative fuel, and we have mixed that with B11 and B20, and that has worked out very well. Next slide, please. So again, we're a school bus contractor. We don't get any of our money through the government. We do not receive any subsidiaries from any other places. So when we purchase a bus or a vehicle, it has to make financial sense, and it has to work well. Obviously, in the nature of the business of taking children to school, as Mike pointed out, you have to have a very, very reliable product. There is nothing worse than having 20, 30, or 40 preschool children stuck somewhere, out somewhere on the highway on a day when it's 5 or 10 below. And in my market in the Chicagoland area, you are expected, not trying, but you are expected to take your students to school. We have run down and had to take those children to school when the temperature, just the temperature, not the windshield, is 5 or 0, and we've had to run in negative degrees in the past. They don't even talk about canceling school or even considering it if you're at 5 inches of snow or more. And in order to get those vehicles running, you have to have a vehicle that's going to be reliable and that's going to work. As you can see on this slide, getting back to the slides, we have run a combination of engines, Mercedes, Cummins, some international, and a lot of international, and some Caterpillar over the years. Next slide, please. So when we talked about, what kind of buses we were going to buy and what it's going to be, we talked about, gosh, we're going to have to make sure that we have a bus that I said that's reliable. Like Mike said in his presentation, it has to be battle tested and it has to work. So we needed a bus that's going to obviously be reliable. And then what we talked about here to a bus that's going to have to idle. We have found over the last 10 years that especially these new diesel engines do not like idling. Because we're in a higher traffic area like most metropolitan areas, we have found out that our buses spend almost about 65% of their day in an idling experience. That's either waiting for a student or a school, we're exiting at a school, or we're at a light, or we're just warming up a little bit. But that problem with the existing diesel engines is they do not like idling. Next slide, please. So we were looking for an alternative to the newer diesels that can have the lower emissions or the zero emissions or pretty close as propane provides, but also something that will run at a reliable nature and then also could be environmentally friendly because of the nature of our business. Again, we're transporting students or small children. Most of our routes that we do today are special education students. So obviously we have a lot of asthmatic students, and that varies from autism, hearing impaired. We do a lot of wheelchairs. With that also, you have to idle the bus to operate the chair up and down and the inside of the bus. So we had to have something that would be reliable, that can idle, and that's why propane fits such a perfect niche for us. Okay, next slide, please. So the propane really fits and solves a lot of problems for us. Now with the EPA regulations going farther and farther and making those diesel engines cleaner, obviously those engines became a lot more particular. They're getting very, very difficult to work on. And it was tough to find technicians that could work on those diesel engines. So for the last 2 years since the 1980s, as you see on the slide, we have not purchased one diesel engine in the last 2 years, and we still see that in the next 5 to 7 years not purchasing any more diesel engines. And I've listed some of the pluses on there. As Mike says, the better and more heat inside the bus really heats up instantly like a car. Without having a block heater, without having to have auxiliary heaters, which many of our buses do. The drivers love the buses, and as anybody in the school bus business or any type of driving job throughout the country, there's a giant shortage of drivers, so you have to really keep your drivers happy. There's half the amount of sensors on the engines, no DPF, no DEF, no turbos. You're using a basic V8 or V10 engine with some different alternatives on it to add the fuel, but it's a very simple engine compared to the other buses that are out there. We found out the maintenance costs are a minimum of 40% savings, and propane is obviously in abundance and it's very cost effective. We do see electric bus down the road, possibly in the next 20 years. But right now, because of expense and availability, that's really not a solid alternative. So we are very, very happy and very high with it. Right now, today, I checked this morning, we provide at least 240 school buses that are propane exclusively, and we are purchasing at least another 100 to 200 buses next year. Next slide. And just so you know, we can, because we're a private company, we can buy any bus we want. We could buy diesel. We do have Thomas. We do have IC. We do have Bluebird. But we choose propane because it does make dollars and cents for us. And then you could see more things on there as far as the savings. And like Mike said, when you put the bus next to a diesel bus in a battle-tested environment, we're very happy and we see that it's making at least a 35% to 45% cost savings. So we're very happy with that. Next slide, please. So when you see these buses running together side by side, and we do have many companies that have propane, gasoline, and diesel that run at the same company, we've been very happy with the production, or I should say, the day-to-day use of the propane school buses. We have used CNG, as the slide shows, back in the 70s and 1980s, and then from the late 80s to about 2 years ago, we have been almost exclusively diesel or gasoline. And again, we have not purchased a diesel bus in the last 2 years, and we do not see purchasing any more diesels for a long time. Next slide, please. So again, it's a perfect alternative for us. We are in a cold market, and we are a private business. So every dollar that we spend here at Cook, Illinois, every dollar has to make $1.10 because we're a for-profit business. So we're very, very happy with our propane buses, and anybody is more than welcome to come by anytime and take a look at our operations. So on to the next speaker.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, John. Our next speaker is going to be Dave Griffin from Icon North America. Dave is going to be speaking about propane generally, but also some interesting applications for propane autogas in the white fleet, which I think is different than what a lot of the speakers are talking about here today. John, or David, are you on? I'll hand it over to you right now.
Yes, I'm on.
Fantastic.
All right. My name is David Griffin, and I work for ICOM North America. Just a brief moment about me. I've been working in the propane industry as a technician for about 20 years now. Decided to sell ICOM, and want to tell you guys a little bit about that. So next slide. All right. First off, just like the rest of these guys, one of our biggest missions in life is to provide those students and those children with cleaner air. Next slide. Allowing your fleet to be a domestic fuel source so that the people like the Saudi Arabians and the Iraqis and the ones that have all the oil can quit sending them money so they can not shoot at us, you know. Next slide. All right, and propane is the alternative fuel source that can do these things for you and save you money in the process. So I know most of you guys are school bus fleets, but what I want to talk to you about is your white fleet application. Your white fleet is not normally quite as big as your school bus fleet, but in a lot of applications it's half as big, or, you know, at least 30 or 40% the same size. And some of this will be white school buses, you know, E450s, E350s. We have a solution for those vehicles as well as the ones that you get from your OE, such as Bluebird and Roush and those guys. Next slide. All right. Just for a moment about ICOM. ICOM came to the United States with a technology that was developed in Italy, and they brought that technology here in 2004. They've done many projects over the years, many OE projects. Today, their main focus is aftermarket, converting existing gasoline vehicles over to run on propane in both biofuel and monofuel applications. Next slide. Just to give you an idea of the size of our dealer network right now, you can see the dots on the map. Those are the ICOM installation service centers throughout. But you can see there's also 400 fleet service centers that, just like the OEs have training, if your fleet does business with ICOM, we send technicians to your facility, and we train your fleet to take care of itself. So along with having all of these guys that do installations throughout the country, we have just 3 times or 4 times that many that do service. Next slide. A few of the accomplishments that ICOM has seen: 30,000 vehicles out there converted using ICOM technology, millions of gallons of fuel consumed and saved. Next slide. All right. Who has done all those things that you saw on that previous slide, used the millions of gallons of fuel, saved the millions of dollars? This is just a handful of the fleets that we have out there. I think you'll recognize a lot of the names. Washington DOT, National Park Service. Next slide. All right, and in my opinion, what makes propane today make sense for most fleets is the liquid injection. So all of the OEs that you can purchase vehicles today that run on propane, the technology that we offer is the same technology in an aftermarket conversion application. Next slide. I'm going to try to hurry along here. Next slide. That's just some of the advantages of propane. This is what makes ICOM unique. The serviceability of our fuel pumps, they're externally mounted, that you don't have to drain a propane tank to change our fuel pump. Next slide. All right, and these are the EPA certification platforms that we have available today for you and your fleet. So pretty much anything 2009 and newer forward, from an E-Series, all of the common fleet used Ford vehicles. Next slide will be the GM availabilities that we have. This is the different General Motors platforms, pretty much same thing, 2010 and newer. Next slide. Just a quick case study. This is a paratransit fleet out of North Carolina that's running about 24 ICOM units today. During the time frame of this slide, they had 20 vehicles operating. They saved $77,000. Their average fuel price was 41 cents. The average gasoline price during the same time frame was $1.55. Next slide. That's all the different ICOM reps and the territories that we cover for, that's who covers what territory. And I'm sure Michael's going to make these slides available to everybody after the webinar. Next slide. I think this is going to be my contact information specifically. Yep. I want to thank everybody for your time, and I apologize. I went about a minute over, but thank you for your time.
Oh, that was great. Thank you so much, Dave, for sharing your expertise today, and I know you were fine for time. Our next speaker up is going to be David Mewson from Zeeland Public Schools in Michigan. So we have a lot of fleets up today with cold weather experience in propane autogas. David's going to be presenting with Prezi slide deck, so we've transferred over control. We're hands off now. Dave, you're good to go.
All righty. Okay, folks. Glad you're all there today, and some good presentations we've had from Mike, Dave. Some of what I have here for you is just a recap of where they've been. I'm part of Zeeland Public Schools in Zeeland, Michigan, where this morning the air temperature was 3 degrees, and none of our propanes failed to do what they had to do. I had a couple of diesels that were a little sluggish, so we had some issues with them, but propane we did not. So if we start here on the first item here, it's clean. All right. We have air intakes on the sides of our buildings. My fleet's to the south of our building. when we get a south wind and they're idling early in the morning, sometimes it smells a little interesting in here. The more propanes we're running out there on regular routes, we don't have those kind of issues. So you know that kind of stuff's safe. Everybody, when you think about school buses or propane, there's always that safety issue that they talk about. The tanks are very strong and safe. They've been proven. They've been shot at with bullets, all that kind of stuff. They're very thick. We've not had any issues. So we've run propanes now since 2010. We had a grant from DERA funds that paid a 50-50 at the time, and we have 14 propanes now that we run out there, and sustainability is kind of where it's at. I have a son who's in the military, he's in the National Guard, and a lot of his buddies have gone overseas. They're always fighting in a sandbox for some type of a fuel source, and we don't have to fight. 90% of the propane is right here in America. We don't have to bring that much in. So do you like to breathe? I know we're dealing with kids in school buses and asthma and young lungs and all that kind of stuff, and that's where you get hints of electric vehicles in the future, that kind of stuff. So yeah, we like to breathe. Propane's non-toxic, all right, non-corrosive, all right. When released into the air, it evaporates. It's heavier than air. And of course, there's odor that's put into it just so we know where it's at. The CARB certified stuff for grants, here it is, and we've seen some of the slides before, the less carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxide, and the less greenhouse gases, all right? Propane is the cleanest burning fossil fuel that's out there for us right now. 90 to 97%, like I mentioned, is produced here in the U.S. It's non-toxic. It's not harmful to the soil, water, or humans. I have a tank out here. We had some water dripping into one of my sumps for my fuel tank. We had to get the sump repaired, and then when that's done, they had to take soil borings because they wanted to know if anything leaked out of our sumps. Well, our sumps have never leaked out. It's only let water come in, and so they're always worried about what's happening to the soil around you. Propane, the safety of propane, it's there. It's been tried and true. I know in 1983, 84, I started here in Zeeland. Our whole fleet was propane. And the first year I was here, the first 2 diesel buses arrived. That's what my predecessor said, hey, this is where we're going. And, you know, we had the international fleet at the time with the IC motors, and you start the bus up, you take off out of the yard in a hurry, the carburetor would freeze up. Today you don't have that stuff. That's been talked about. The drivers, they fueled their own buses back at that time. We do again today. All right, you don't have the spills. It doesn't go all over the ground. You don't have to use the oil absorber, all that kind of stuff. We've got safety gloves, the big gloves, and some safety protection for eyes. Just, I mean, it makes sense, but it fills to 80%. You can't overfill it. You can't start the fueling process, go in, sweep your bus, forget that the fuel is going in. All of a sudden, oh my gosh, it didn't shut off, and you got all kinds of oil over the ground. Right here, I've got a missing video. You can go online to YouTube. It is a Bluebird video about proper fueling your school bus. All right, so you guys can go to do that anytime. What drivers have noticed about propane buses, they're very quiet. All right, so we've been in the diesels for a while. Here we're back into propanes, and the driver's like, oh my goodness, I can hear. Interesting, kids can come up to me and they don't have to yell. The buses heat up quickly like today. All right, you don't have the order, there's no plug-ins. All right, for the engines are required. There's another savings there. How many of us are running diesel motors in this kind of a climate, and we're plugging them in every day, and electricity is expensive? That's another savings. Drivers report improved acceleration. Propane enhances performance by providing 104 octane rating, that kind of stuff. You do need to work with your drivers, though, and train them how to properly refuel. You have to go through those safety procedures. We have a particular vendor who we said, hey, we want to, you know, part of the process here, can you? And so they installed the tank and the pump and all the piping, the tubing. The only thing that we had to do is provide the cement pad for the tank and the electricity and the data cable to get out there so we can make sure we keep track of stuff. Alrighty. So there was another video about just the safety of that stuff. The garage operations and my guys in the shop, a couple of them were a little skeptic. Now it's like, it's not a big deal. There's very extra stuff that you have to do. You just want to make sure. I mean, gasoline's explosive. Diesel does have a flash point, etc. So they just make sure that they think about things. In the first few propane buses we did have, we had some issues with fuel pumps, all right? And our dealership, we bring them back, and they're like, what do we do? It took them a long time. Since we're off warranty and we're doing it ourselves, we know how to burn off and how to transfer propane. It just takes a little bit of time to get your technicians up and running and thinking. So propane has a built-in safety properties with it, with the narrow range of flammability that comes with it. It doesn't ignite when combined with air unless other source of ignitions. All right, so you can see the different degrees in Fahrenheit stuff there. Propane fuel systems are fitted with a lot of safety devices and extra shutoff valves, etc. There's warning labels on the sides for EMT and those types of people, and we've had our EMT people out to us to say, all right, so this isn't diesel or gas, this is propane, what do you want to know? They're like, whoa, and then they start looking around and go, oh, this isn't as bad. Okay, this is where a main shutoff valve is, that kind of stuff. There's like, okay, we're good. It's not toxic. It's not poisonous. All right, so there's just certain things you want to think about when you handle it. Other things for safety, we have the material data sheets. All right, we know and understand emergency response information stuff. There's guidelines, and here's some things that are for there. So you need to plan, and we have all of our drivers are certified as a Class C operator for the fueling of systems, and so they have to study about what to do with the gasoline pump, the diesel pump, as well as all the things about propane safety as well. They're all trained and documented on that. And here's just a little bit of a guide, protective clothing, that kind of stuff. We're going to continue through this, so some of that you've seen, but you can get this kind of stuff off the web. If you the 1996 edition, I don't know if it's been updated since then. I haven't looked at the titles, but just talks about the spill and leaks, what really happens, and what kind of first aid if you do get some stuff on you. I have a couple folks, and maybe it might even be myself on occasion, who will fill the bus. We don't put the gloves on, and you got to be very careful because when you have the psh at the end, product comes in with your skin, you get a little frostbite on it. But the way the systems are and what you've seen in some of the earlier videos, there's little to no chance of getting anything on you unless you have a line that just totally disrupt or get a rupture in a line. Recommended maintenance schedule for stuff. If you look at some of this kind of stuff, the frequency and all that, you can get that. And this is a sample from Clean Cities that we've used. The first number of our buses were Clean Cities. Here's just an example of a warning symbol that's on some of the buses in certain places to keep people thinking about, all right, I got to be smart, like I should be smart even when I'm handling diesel or gasoline. And so some of these things are around here, and things you share with your technicians, your mechanics. Code for motor fuel dispensing facilities and repairs of your garages. One thing that's been very supportful, and I'm sure other companies would do the same, but the company who's providing us with our propane, they come in here once a year and they want to see they gave me a DVD so I can show my new employees and stuff. They want to see my logs and stuff for training my for training my employees how to fuel and dispense, and that there's some documented things that I've talked to the mechanics, and we've talked and looked at things about our repair facilities. So when we do bring a bus in and we do need to disconnect lines and check fuel pressures or replace a fuel pump, they're aware of what's going on and they're familiar and we're safe. Just other things about garaging your vehicles, what you should do, and I'm kind of zipping through this. At the beginning, it's like $5,000 more for a propane vehicle. All right, benefits include reduced fuel costs, tax credits. We've taken advantage of those. We still have some of those for us. Lower emission levels, fewer oil changes. Somebody hasn't mentioned that. They've mentioned the price of filters. So when you're doing your big diesels, you're looking at 22 to 24 quarts of oil. We got the regular 6, 7, 7.5, 8 quarts of oil for a big block gas motor. So there's less of that kind of stuff. So the 50 cents a gallon tax incentive when we started is going to go away, but there's still some other things and places you can look for resources if you need to. It's been interesting. Vehicles can be serviced with existing diagnostic equipment. I mean, it's a gas motor, and we've got a couple Roush motors in our fleet now from Bluebird. We have some of the ICs from PSI. My guys have their diagnostic equipment. We can diagnose all the stuff on the motor just like they do any other kind of a motor. It talks about the fuel tanks, 20 times safer and thicker. Wholesale prices, and I got some data back here, and it still follows the same kind of trend. Where are they? And when you compare wholesale prices of natural gas to diesel, propane, and gasoline, they kind of follow it, but, you know, propane always has been just a little bit less. A New York case study, I threw this one out there. LP cost per mile, diesel cost per mile, cost savings with LP. This is what I used when I went together and put things together for my grant and talked to my school board to say, I think in time we can actually save ourselves some dollars in the long run. So we did a case study ourselves in 2013. Went, okay, here's your propane and your oil changes, how many so much per quart, miles. Okay, we change the oil more often. We still do oil analysis and all that kind of stuff, but when you figure it all out over time, all right, 180 to 200,000 miles on a bus, when you send them down the road, you save $360. Okay, not a lot of money. Drop down to the next category. When we start talking about fuel, then it starts to add up. And even though we have reduced miles per gallon compared to diesel, once we start averaging the cost and what's it costing us per mile, you can see there's quite a distance there. Now, of course, nobody's paying $3.20 today for their diesel prices, all right? And so that's not there. And propane at 91. If we use those prices, though, when we started like 4 years ago, it was $3.20. You multiply that over the 180,000 miles, you're looking at $37,800 of savings in the life of your vehicle. I did some cost analysis yesterday on some things. I'm with 50-cent credits and all that kind of stuff. We were very close to the 55 cents per gallon that we were paying for propane. 14, 15, we were paying $2.50 for diesel. We were paying 94 cents, and then we had to take our deduct off of that. In 15, 16, we're paying $1.80 for diesel fuel, 80 cents for propane. Last year's budget year 16, 17, it was like 91 cents, all right, and we were paying $1.65 for diesel. Over the summer, diesel was coming down pretty good until this last spring, until this past summer. But got fuel a week ago, and it was back to just over $2 a gallon for diesel. And I got my bill today for my propane, and it was $1.30 something per gallon, and I still got some tax credits to go from that. So some of that is still there for us. So when you average it all out, slow time for questions, we're looking at, you know, we're running 20-some cents a mile compared to 31 cents plus per mile in 14, 15, 17 cents a mile compared to 26, 27 cents a mile for diesel when we were in 15, 16. Now this past year was much closer. When you start dropping your price down to about half of what you're paying for the other, and your miles per gallon are close, then okay, you're getting more into an even Steven game. But now you got to think about, you got more filters and that kind of stuff. And I'll tell you, I'm not sure about everybody else out there, but the school bus operation, they run in the morning, they run in the afternoon. They're not going from Michigan to the West Coast to pick up oranges or to haul a load of office furniture, and they're on for 24, 48 hours straight running. They're warm, they're cold, they're warm, they're cold, and we have lots of issues with EGRs and all that, you know, all the exhaust stuff that goes with our cleaner burning diesels. So you don't have that. You just got your regular old catalytic converter on your propane motors. So with that, I think it's just about question time here for me. So yeah. Got her?
Fantastic. We're switching back over here. David,
There
that
you
was
go.
an incredible presentation. Thank you so much for that. We have a lot of
You're
folks
welcome.
coming on.